by 2027, the earth is going to look very different. Like things are going to start to shift into a different energy. And they started showing me waves of humans. The awakening is continuing to happen, but there are going to be waves of humans that really start to shift into a higher frequency around 2027. And we have beings that are helping us more so on the other side to ascend into that. And so from now until around then, we might be going through kind of like the tower moment of humanity, of breaking down the old system so new can be risen back up.
Welcome to the Light the Day podcast, where we explore spiritually transformative experiences. I'm your host, Julie Clough. You can find me at julieclough.com. And remember, if you're watching this on YouTube, to subscribe and hit the little bell and like and all the things, comment. Be sure to show some love to our guests that we have on the show. And if you're in the podcast apps, review there as well. We would love to hear from you. So today I have back Angie Harris. I interviewed Angie a few months ago, and she told her background story, and she shared her spiritual sensitivity from the time that she was young and a lot of the trauma that she experienced and how that developed into a very intuitive, very intuitive experiences. And now as a, oh, what would you call yourself, Angie? A
I'm
psychic medium,
multi,
channeler,
yes, multi
multidimensional.
things. No, I would say I think the broad aspect it would be a healer more so than, and then all the others kind of go underneath that. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. Yeah, 100%. Um, and I asked you to come back on because you have been sharing. We have lots of really in-depth, interesting conversations in the sidelines pretty
Right.
regularly. And so I asked you to come back on the show so you could share some of the things that you are currently sharing on social media, on your YouTube channel, some of the insights that you've been receiving about kind of where society is going. We're all feeling this shift and change, and people who are not even aware of uh are not even like what you would call spiritually aware
Mm.
are feeling it. So I'm curious from your point of view what you are experiencing, what the messages that you're receiving. You also have a new book out. But before we go there, just very briefly take us back and give us a quick synopsis of your personal story and how you came to this place of being a healer. Because I don't
Yeah.
think a few years ago you knew that you were a healer.
Not an aspect I do now. I think from a young age, like I always knew I was different. I could see spirits. I knew I could heal myself at a young age, didn't know why, didn't know how. And I think at a young age, you always think everybody else has these same experiences. Then you grow up and realize that that's not true. And so you start to fit in and try to be like everybody else. Because I was so very spiritual and I was so like intrigued by God and the unseen world and aliens and astrology, like all of it. I was so intrigued by all of it. I was looking for answers because I knew there was something beyond what I understood as a human. And I ended up in the church at age 16. My family didn't go to church. I actually would sneak to church sometimes just because I wanted to be there so badly. And then from there, I believe that I really started to integrate the beliefs of, for me, I was in a non-denominational Christian church, which then later I went to a non-denominational Pentecostal church. Um, and I believe I started to wrap up in my beliefs my gifts based on what the church was teaching me. So, understanding from what they believed about my gifts. Like if I came to church and said, I saw something, I saw a shadow, I heard something, or I had this dream, or I had this vision, they would come back and say, well, that's demonic. You need to cast that out of you. Like, that's not good, that kind of stuff. And so I really started to develop this belief that there was something wrong with me instead of I had a gift,
Hmm.
and ended up going to a Christian college. There was always something in me that knew I was supposed to do something spiritually. I couldn't ever get away from it. But I also knew I wanted to help people heal. And I think part of that was from my childhood, having a lot of trauma growing up, lots of abuse that came on me from the time I was born until like my mid-teens. Um, but I just knew there was something that I was supposed to do in this world. And so I ended up working in the mental health field. I thought I was going to be in the church setting, but the universe always kind of is always guiding you towards your path. And if you are allowing that guidance system, then you'll find your way. But I volunteered in the church. I did ministries. I was a Sunday school teacher. I was a youth leader. I was a women's minister, all the things that you could do. And I never stopped seeking. Like I was the one that would sit in the back of the church and be like, I'm not sure I believe that. And I would ask questions, which would, that's not always what they want to hear. So they would give me this answer like, oh no, that's wrong, whatever. But I never quit asking. And in 2016, I had a very profound spiritual experience in my backyard where I heard an audible voice that told me I was doing it wrong. That I look back at that moment now and I know for sure it was my spirit team coming to support me and kind of get me back on track, because I was not necessarily really off track, but I was working in the mental health field. I was doing healing work. I was helping people. I was in the church, but I wasn't really tapped into my truth and why I'm here on earth. And so at that moment, my entire life flashed before my eyes in just a second. And I suddenly felt like everything in my life was out of place. I started feeling like I felt the smallness of what my life was like. And I remember thinking, I can't do this for the rest of my life. I can't be in this job the rest of my life. I can't go to church the rest of my life. I can't, this isn't it. Like it was literally like a near death experience. And my whole life was just like in a flash, I could see how off I was. And so at that moment, I started to pursue whatever had happened to me, like finding answers for that. And that's when I started hearing from my spirit guides very clearly. I didn't know at the time that that's what I was hearing, but they were talking to me about getting in contact with my dad, who was about to get cancer and die. And I didn't know that. They were talking to me about what I was going to do with my life. They were talking, like, all this stuff was coming at me. And I started having this urge to meditate. Like, I started meditating every single day for hours. And that just has unfolded over the last almost 10 years now of me really transforming and awakening to a version of myself that had always been there, but had been really covered up by the world standards around religion and who you have to be acceptable, to fit in, and like giving of yourself and not taking care of yourself. Man, I was so burnt out back then. It was just like it was so hard to keep going. I'm so thankful I woke up, because I don't know that I would have continued to survive in that life. But um then when my dad passed away, he did, I spirit was right. He got cancer. Um and he passed away in 2020, and that's when things really started opening up even more, because my dad started coming back and talking to me and about who I am, what I'm here to do on earth. I believe that part of where I am now is because he helped me to heal parts of myself I didn't know I needed to heal. And then I just started opening up to other dimensions and beings, and started having out of body experiences, and like everything I like I I don't think you could ever make this stuff up because nothing, I wasn't looking for the things. It
Right.
just started to come to me. And then just kind of fell into the place of like being a healer and holding frequency to help reflect back to other people who they are so that they can learn to be in the same frequency that I have come in to know. Because I believe we're all from that. I don't think I know we're all divine beings and we're all direct reflections of God itself. And when we remember that, we come back into this energetic truth of who we are, where we don't have to pretend to be a part of this world anymore.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. What a beautiful synopsis of your story. Angie could see me. You guys couldn't, but I'm just like, I'm over here just grinning and shaking my head because I can relate to so much of what you're saying. Like, I was that seeker within the religious community. And then when you have this experience where all of a sudden you recognize, but it's all beautiful. Like,
Mhm.
that transition from all the pain and the abuse that you experience into the church and sharing your gifts within the church, developing your spiritual gifts within the church was a
Mhm.
beautiful thing and brought you to a place of some healing so that then you were ready for the next phase. But it's that moment when all of a sudden what's coming to mind is the Truman Show. Like, he's living this life and he's in this, and then all of a sudden you realize, wait, I'm in this bubble. And it felt the same way when you were sharing that. It's like spirit
Mhm.
came to you, said, you're doing it wrong. And then you have this visual and this download and this vision of, oh, I'm in this box.
Mhm.
I'm cocooned into this box, and while it feels safe and it feels like, oh, if I do this and this and this, they've promised me this and this and this, you can no longer be in that box
Mhm.
because now all of a sudden it's just like the Truman Show. He can no longer stay in the bubble because his eyes had been opened and he needed to go through the door. And so you were invited to come out of that box. But then I could just feel too the loss of, oh my gosh, everything needs to change. And that's so overwhelming. And you don't even know exactly where you're going. And you've spent so many years pretzeling,
Mhm.
like that twisting yourself into a pretzel to assimilate into the congregation, into the society that you found yourself in. I also want to mention to everyone, Angie wrote a couple books about her experience, Leaf Lessons, and what was the name of the second book?
Composting the ego.
Composting the Ego. And then you recently came out with a third book, which you'll talk about later, because I don't want to give that away too soon. But you have a couple books where you talk about this awakening that you had, this understanding that you were living in this confinement. And really, my viewpoint is we're all living here in confinement. Even as I just don't know that from our human perspective, we can fully comprehend the divine perspective. And yet, the more that we seek and we connect to that, the I'm going to use the word better. I don't know if that's the right word, but the more understanding we have, it just feels it's still not easy, but it just feels different. And we have a different experience once we're allowing that understanding and that opening. So thank you
Mhm.
so much for capsulizing your story for us because that was a beautiful, beautiful review. So like I said before, one of the reasons I wanted you to come back is I wanted you to talk about some of the things that you're receiving because You're receiving, and you've been open about what you're receiving, about what we're going through here as humanity, and a little bit about where we're headed. The messages that I've received have been somewhat around this idea that we can't really comprehend where we're headed because we haven't been there before.
Yeah.
And so the need for this spiritual guidance is so important because we are going into a foreign land. We're going into foreign territory, but our
Hmm.
guides understand and can, they've been there. They can comprehend the map, the territory. They can guide us through.
Hmm.
So share with us just a few things that you have learned about what's happening right now, and then we'll go into kind of future, what's next.
Yeah. So being able to wrap this up into human language is a little difficult just because a lot of the information I receive is usually channeled through a higher frequency. And the way I work with my spirit team is I ask them to break things down as if they're talking to a child or kindergartner because I want to comprehend what they're saying on a level that I can share with other people. Because what is happening is it can be either scary or exciting no matter what angle you look at it. Because if you are looking at something in the energy of fear, you're going to be experiencing fear around you. If you're looking at something in the energy of excitement, you're going to be experiencing excitement. And I think every single human in the world can see there's something happening. Or if you can't see it, you feel it. It's interesting. I was sitting in getting my car worked on the other day, and I was sitting waiting in the area, and the man sitting there just randomly looked at me and out of the blue said something about the sun looks different. And and it was interesting to me because, here I am, I want to go into this big channel of like, this is why it looks different and, all this stuff. But it was interesting that he was saying back to me, I could tell that he was like in this like contemplating, searching energy, not yet fully awake to the process of an ascension or an awakening on earth. But he was saying to me, the sun is in a different place. And then I said back to him, do you realize there's also a different color? And he goes, oh my God, you're right. And I said, yeah, just pay more attention to what's happening. So if we even just look at the physical part of our world, we can see there's something shifting and happening. And we could say that the earth's tilting or whatever that might be. But everything in the universe repeats on cycles. There's a life death process throughout the entire universe. And we as humans and as spirits have been going through that same process of life death, and you could call that reincarnation. But what is taking place is what God or what source has shown me in my ability to see beyond our human understanding is God is constantly creating more of itself because that's just what God does. God is a creator. God is a what we would call a manifester, and that manifestation is out of the energy of love. And God has created a realm so, what we in our human comprehension, so far away from itself that it had to create physical density for us to live into and live in it. And so and you may have heard, if you have been around the spiritual community for a while, you may have heard things like the leading thoughts or the thoughts of the edge or whatever. Like I know other channelers have said things like the leading thought of the edge or something like that. And we are literally on the edge of the thought of the universe, which is God. So that's why we feel so far from God. And that's why we feel like there's this veil between us and the divine energy that we're from. And we forget why we're here in this earthly realm and what we'll call, just to comprehend, the third dimension, because the third dimension was created to experience God in a physical form. So what has happened is God is now retracting itself back to itself. And what we're in our comprehension, that's what we're interpreting as the ascension. That's what we're interpreting as a shift in consciousness. So whether you realize it or not, if you are here on earth at this time, you are being impacted by something shifting in your consciousness, and whether you are going with the flow or against the flow is how you are interpreting it. Because if you're fighting against something, you're probably going to be looking at a lot of things around you as destructive and fearful. And you can, I mean, since we live in the US, that's what we see here in the US is destruction, fear, control, like all this stuff is kind of stirred up around us. And then throughout the entire world, this is happening as well. Not that it hasn't been at the, in this way before, but it seems different now than maybe what it has before. And you can even talk to some of the like people that are older that they will talk about how things are different. Another thing we might notice is that time is speeding up. We're moving faster through time, and that's because the closer you are to God, the less dense things are, and time doesn't exist in the higher dimensions. And so we are actually in the process of reawakening to our truth as being divine beings. And when we leave our human body, when we call what we call death or die, we actually go back into the remembrance that we were never human in the first place, that we're pretending to be a human. But why we're here in the human experience, because this is a part of source energy, God's expansion of itself. It is, it's almost like we have come into this physical experience enough times that we've already created what we wanted to create with the physical experience. Now the physical experience can begin to shift into a different kind of being, which is less physical. So people are having what we call ascension symptoms. People are starting to want to heal their trauma, which if you would have looked 100 years back, that wasn't taking place. People are wanting more unity and peace on earth. And it may appear from a fearful view when you look out that there's more of the negative than there's the positive. But if you were able to look it through a source energies or God's eyes, there's actually more positive than there is negative. And it's the way we perceive it and our attention that we give it is what we experience in our reality. And so the more you are looking towards what is to come, even though we are not fully comprehending what is coming, the less we get caught up in what is happening and the fear of it. And I had an experience, this is a, I don't know how many months ago, this may have been a couple months ago. Um, I just get these random insights and downloads from spirit sometime. And I had a moment where suddenly I shifted out of my human consciousness and I got a glimpse of what New Earth looks like. I got a glimpse at what Ascension looks like in a 5D energy. And it was like the only way I can describe it is like perfection and like everybody getting along, everything going really well, like everybody working together. And it was like I could see myself in that realm as like, I mean, there's not even really a need for healers at that point, but I could see in myself in that realm as like being a different type of human. And for just a second, a split in my energy happened where I was in myself now and in that part of me then. And it kind of freaked me out because I thought, I can't do that. I can't maintain that high of a frequency all the time and be that good all the time. Because in order to be that good, I have to be dead. And so it was this moment of clarity of where we're going, but also why it's taking time to get there. Because if we shifted from where we are now into perfection, we couldn't handle it. We
Mm.
would literally have to leave our human body. And so, what is happening is all this energy shift is taking place on Earth so that we can gradually shift into that higher frequency in what we call a 5D or a new Earth. ascension. So,
What came to mind when you were talking about that, excuse me, is is that we all can remember times when we've been in community or we've been in places where our higher self shows up more
mhm,
than, and then in other places where we're more challenged and it's harder for the, and again, like what you're talking about, it's like, how connected are we to our divine presence, our divine nature, the divinity within? How aware of that are we? How centered are we in that? And there's places and experiences that support that more than others. And when you were talking about that, I where we're at right now, and especially if we're not paying attention to what we're consuming, if we're consuming a lot of fear-based, and some of that fear-based narrative is coming from places you might not be noticing. So
mhm,
paying attention to where those fear-based messages are coming from, and paying attention to what we're consuming, what we're taking in, because I know for myself, if I'm consuming a lot of fear-based narratives, a lot of fear-based entertainment, a lot of fear-based news or commentary, my day just looks and feels different.
mhm,
And so we're moving into a space where we are more integrated. The spiritual, the physical is more integrated. The way that I see it, it's almost like that's so funny. Okay, I'd never thought of it this way, but what my guides are sharing with me is it's kind of like it's kind of like a mixed breed dog, you know, where I've had these poodle mix. I've had a couple of dogs that are poodle mixes, and depending on how much, it's 3/4 Maltese and one fourth poodle, right? Like we're going from a place of 3/4 physical and one-fourth spiritual to a place of 3/4 spiritual, one-fourth physical. Just more awareness of the spiritual, more living in the light body, more lightening of the physical aspects is what I saw, heard, felt as you were sharing that.
mhm,
I also wanted to, you mentioned reincarnation, and I had a download the other day where I was told that we are reincarnating every day. And I just loved that thought. And if we just think in terms of what am I what am I um, bringing to my life today? We sleep. We actually go into the spirit realm when we're sleeping. We don't recognize that. We don't know that. We're not as aware. Some people are more aware than other people, but we have that healing sleep that keeps us connected to the spirit realm. And then we wake up, and what are we bringing into the physical in that reincarnation in that new day? So I
mhm,
thought that was a really interesting
mhm,
way of looking at it. And I
mhm,
also loved what you were talking about, like the energy. I was just talking to a client yesterday, in fact, about this idea of like, from what energy are we creating?
mhm,
And it's when we can go, okay, I can do the same activity. I can do a podcast interview, for example, and I can do it from the feeling and the energy of anxiety and frustration and maybe, this push, I got to get it done. Or I can do it from the energy of love and the energy of seeking and excitement. So, paying attention to what energy we're bringing into everything that we're creating, just kind of
mhm.
paying attention. It's not judgment. Like we start getting really, really judgmental of ourselves. I
Mhm.
don't know. Those were just some of the thoughts that came up as you were talking.
Yeah. Well, the more that you shift into a higher consciousness, the more you're aware of how you feel. And the feelings
For
that
sure.
humans have are our navigation center. That's how we know when we are going the right direction or not, and when we're most connected to our truth of a higher dimensional being. So if I'm making a choice, I can actually feel into the energy of, do I feel good? Like when I think about making this choice, does it make me excited? Or does it make me feel a little bit cringy? Like, do I get like the way that I like to think of it, is it feel expansive or does it feel restricting? Now, expansive doesn't mean there's not fear involved, because part of a human experience is going into the unknown, because in order to grow, you have to do something you've not done before. In order to continue to move forward, you have to push yourself beyond the limit of where you have known to be. And that's what the ascension is we are learning how to navigate through the gifts of emotion and feeling that God gave us. And we're actually, for the first time, I think in hundreds, thousands of years, using that navigation center that we're given to make choices that are more aligned for our highest good and for humanity's highest good. So when you are tapping into another dimension, that dimension, the higher frequencies are always going to be based out of the frequency of love. And the more that you are connecting with loving frequency, the less you want to engage with things that are not loving, or, make you feel cringy. Nobody wants to feel that way. But humanity for such a long time was just so dense. There wasn't even an acknowledgement that this doesn't feel good, because it just was we were all in survival. Like, we're here just to live our life and die. But now there's like a new comprehension of, we're not here just to live our life and die. We're here as creators. We're co-creators with God. We are working along the energy of source, our creator, to create more of itself. And so, in order to do so, we here in this dense energy need to understand the difference between, am I tapping into something that is creating something I don't want, or am I tapping into something that is creating what I do want? And what I do
Yeah.
want is more of God and
Mm,
more love. And so it's this push pull between the ego and the spirit constantly, of like learning how that navigation center works inside of us. And a lot of people look for the answers outside of us. Like, it's interesting. I had this epiphany the other night. I was wanting to meditate, and like I was asking God, can you give me a perspective of the universe from your vision? Like, what does it look like being God and looking out throughout the universe and seeing everything taking place? Like,
that's a bold
it was,
question.
I don't know why I thought that, but I was like, give it to me, God. I want to see what it's like to be God. And I didn't necessarily see everything in a universe, but God, I do feel like I got a vision. What I saw in my mind's eye was a donut, like a spear with a hole in it. And God, and I don't believe that this is what God looks like, but this is how it was describing itself to me. But this spear, and he was saying, you're on the very edge of this spear, and I'm pulling you back to me, and I'm awakening you back to who you are. And this is a constant, and it's going each way, every way, all the different ways. And each time it does it, it expands itself and grows itself, and it creates more of itself. And so when we see that we are that energy projected out, and then we remember that and come back to it, then it feels uncomfortable to be anything other than that. And that's why when you're awakening and you're going through a shift in your consciousness, and you're receiving information and downloads or light codes or whatever's coming into your awareness, when you try to go fit yourself, like if I were to go fit in that box that spirit showed me I was in 10 years ago, I would I would not be able to survive it, because it's like trying to squeeze my adult body back into my baby clothes. And I've outgrown that and I can't do that. And so this is where humanity is and this is why there's a potential split that can happen for a short amount of time anyways, is those who are ready and willing to move into that higher frequency and are following those prompts of their soul's guidance, and those who are continuing to focus on the fear, this energy is going to, open up where there's going to be people staying in a lower frequency and those rising into a higher frequency. But I also believe that God has already given us everything that we need to ascend, and that's why there's healers on the earth. There wouldn't be a need for healers if everybody just knew what to do and how to work through this ascension. There wouldn't be a need for spirit guides if God didn't know we were going to come be a human and we didn't need guidance from that dimension. There wouldn't be a need for angels to help protect and to lead and them help the guides. Like, everything is divinely in order from God's perspective looking outward, because it always has a way back to itself. And that's what it means. If you were in the church, that's what it means. There is no separation from God. We literally cannot separate ourselves from God at all. We could go to the depths in the deepest part of the universe and completely forget who we are as this divine being, but there's still always going to be something that guides us back. And it will and can happen. And it happens every single day. And so, what you're saying with that reincarnation is ev- every day there's a new opportunity and awakening. And God has created everything as a replica of itself. And so, if you even look at the human body, we're regenerating cells, we're regenerating skin, we're our bodies expanding and growing. It's like we are, like, every single thing in the universe is a representation of God's energy. We just don't see it from our perspective because we're looking through the human lens. And there is a literal veil that protects us, because if we came here without a veil, could you imagine knowing you're not supposed to be a human and like being stuck in this body and how tormenting it would be? I mean, that's kind of what we're all feeling right now, is we're
Yeah.
waking up and saying, this isn't it. This isn't it. And it's almost like torment. Like, get me out of this.
That's why so many people who have near-death experiences and experience the heavenly realm come back and they go through deep depression. They
Mhm.
really struggle. And so there's a lot of people that say, well, if we have a loving God, if God is love, if God is, unconditional, pure love, then why would he, she, they put us here in these abominable situations where we experience so much pain and so much suffering. But when we start to see the full picture and when we start to understand that we made choices to come here, we made choices to live the life that we're living. It's like I always say, I stood in the wrong lines in heaven. I don't know what I was thinking. I signed up for too much. How do I get off
Yeah.
of this track? But, I'm not off the track. I'm still on it. So it's, fun and harrowing sometimes. But we don't understand the need from the perspective we're in now, the need for that veil, the need for us to be in this place of remembering and having this slower remembering versus coming here remembering. I actually know someone, I'm hoping to get him on the show, who has a lot of memories, pre-birth memories, and it's really challenging for him,
Mhm.
right? It's really challenging for him to be here, just like it is for people who go to the other side and
Mhm.
they're all of a sudden, they're Truman outside the bubble being told you got to go back into the bubble, and they're like, no. And so we look at it's so challenging from this earthly perspective to understand what we're going through. But when we start to open our eyes and we start to just even consider, could this be true? Could this be a part of the experience to come here, to learn in this way, to lift these weights of being in a mortal body, of being incarnated in this way. What that is bringing to our own spiritual development, to our own eternal development, and how wonderful that is. I'm always surprised, and I loved what you said about the need for healers and teachers because a couple of things. One is, and there's probably you're probably listening right now. I'm going to call you out right now because I know there's people listening right now that are like they're listening to this stuff, but they've not talked to anybody about it. They're kind of in hiding. I did that for a long time myself. They're kind of a little bit in hiding because they don't feel like their family or their friends or the people around them would understand this stuff. But what I'm discovering is there's so many people. There's people that will come up to me and they'll start telling me about their experiences and going, okay, how do you experience this? And they're trying to understand the experiences that they're having, but they're afraid to talk about it. And I think there's more of us having those experiences, but not talking about it enough. And that's what I love about these conversations is because these conversations are becoming much wider and broader and normalized. We have huge platforms with celebrities that are talking about these topics, and I just love it. And one of the messages I received almost 2 years ago was this idea that there needs to be a group that are, educated to a certain extent because it's like what they told me was we're going to see more and more people waking up to these ideas, to remembering the divine connection in this way. And the way they said it to me was, just because you have a plane doesn't mean you know how to fly it.
Mhm.
And so when we have these experiences, like you and I, we've had to integrate the experiences. We've had to try to figure out like what does this mean? And am I seeing the full meaning or am I seeing a part of the meaning? Am I interpreting it with this language and I really need this language? There's just so many things to it.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I'm just fascinated by all of this.
I think the beautiful thing that we get to experience as humans is the ability to question and to ask. Because in in the spirit realm, there's no asking, there's no questioning, there just is. There's just knowing. And I think we get caught up in the idea that the questions are something we shouldn't want or we shouldn't need. Like we should already know this. We should have already arrived somewhere. I already have what I need. And that is exactly when you stop growing. And the gift of a human being is to question. I mean, if we were to really dive into the teachings of our master Jesus that brought light to the earth to for us to learn from, there is a message in there where he says, seek and you will find, ask and is given, knock and the door is open. Why do we need to seek? Why do we need to, ask? Why do we need to knock? Like, that's because we were created to do that. And that's the benefit from the time where we become a human. We are learning and experiencing and growing, and there's never ending questions that we can ask because there's never a way we won't ever know it all as a human, never. And that's the beauty of the experience. Yet sometimes we think that's the challenge of the experience.
Yeah,
But without the questions, we don't seek the answers.
yeah. And that's I love that you brought that up because it really is about seeking and finding. And you mentioned a minute ago this idea that when we stop asking questions, when we think that we have the answers, when we think that we have certainty around something, that's when the growth stops.
Mhm.
And so there's, in some cases, whether it was in school or some other setting, in some instances, we've been a little bit taught to kind of sit back, be quiet, and just let the other person decide what it is we learn.
Mhm.
And our educational systems are in place to just give out information, not places of seeking and learning and self-directed
Mhm.
learning, which is what I love about being an adult, honestly.
Mhm. Mhm.
I get to decide what I do,
Mhm.
what my homework is, if you
Yeah.
will.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I love that so much. So what are they telling you about what kinds of information messages are you receiving about the future? Talk a little bit about your new book and what's contained in that because it's really fascinating. It's beautiful.
Yeah, well, I'll talk about the book and then I'll go into because the book actually is kind of guiding to the future. It's called Parables for a New Earth, and it's a downloaded book. Like this entire book was channeled. I wrote it basically throughout the last year and a half. I have been receiving messages from a council who call themselves the Wisdom Keepers, and the Wisdom Keepers, from what they have told me, are a 12th dimensional spirit team. They originally were telling me there were 12 of them, but recently if they have been telling me there's 14 of them, which has been interesting. But they have given me a little bit of a glimpse into their energy and helped me to understand who they are, what they do within the universe. And this is a little woo woo and out there. So if anybody's just opening themselves up to this kind of stuff, I understand. I felt the same way when I started getting this information. I was like, this is a little weird. But they hold wisdom of the universe. So a lot of the information I get is because they're in a 12th dimension gathering what's happening and then channeling that to me to help humanity to understand why we're going through what we're going through. And so they're kind of like the healers of a higher realm, just like the healers of earth are. They're helping guide those who are here to help other humans understand the ascension. And I started receiving messages probably about 3 years ago, and this has kind of unfolded over the years. But I started keeping track of all of these messages they were giving me, and as I was getting these messages, and I would like either write them down or I'd record myself saying them. I started to realize these sound a lot like the parables Jesus would talk about. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. These are kind of like examples that we can look into and understand ourselves better. And so that's how the parables of a new earth ended up being the title of the book. But each different parable you would read in there has a little bit more information about being a human, about the ascension, about connecting with other beings of light in the multi universe. You would maybe call them aliens or guides or star seeds or angels, whatever it might be. Everything is kind of one consciousness, but just like humans are broken up into different humans, and like you're Julie and I'm Angie, everything else gets to kind of hold its own frequency in the universe as well. But these beings I directly work with are what they call an Octarian race. So it's a higher dimensional race that you would call, and they're very beautiful, magical blue beings. They're like glowing, sparkly blue light beings, and they're very loving and have a huge desire to help humanity. Um, and I think we don't realize how important the ascension of Earth is to all other beings in the universe because we hold such an important part of the frequency. It's almost like if that what they're showing me right now, they're saying it would be like the human body if like your leg never stopped being a baby leg.
Mm.
and the rest of your body grew, you would be out of alignment. So, us ascending and growing on earth is actually ascending and growing the divine, and it's all kind of moving into place. But there, recently, what they have been telling me is that there there's information what through what we would call maybe light codes coming to earth, and they're saying, particularly from this moment, it's like we're in it now, and for the next 2 to 3 months, there's going to be a whole bunch of light codes coming to Earth. And those light codes are going to be awakening more people. And there's been waves of this happening for the last 20 or so years, where if you've woken up in the last 20 to 30 years, and they're telling me particularly 20 right now, but this is what is happening is you're receiving a code, but it's not necessarily a code that is just coming out of nowhere. This is like a code that's already been inside of you that is just coming into alignment. It's almost like you've had this thing downloaded on your computer, but it's just been sitting dormant there and you've never used it. And then all of a sudden you learn how to use it and you're like, oh, this is so cool, there's more information I can do there, I can do more with this. And so what we're doing is we're receiving, it's almost like little keys opening up parts of ourself that have been dormant, and these dormanted parts are expanding our ability to see beyond the human logic and connect with higher dimensions. So a lot of people are opening up to wanting to speak with spirit guides, wanting to get to know angels, wanting to learn mediumship, or learning that they actually are psychic and they can telepathically pick up things, or I can remote view, or whatever that might be. There's a lot of this language around these things, but these are all just us learning who we really are. It's not these new awarenesses from our spirit's perspective. It's just like, oh, our babies are waking up. They're learning who they really are, you
They're
know?
learning to crawl. They're learning to
Yes.
walk. Now look, they're running.
Yeah, right. So that's kind of what is happening. And um, I'm getting like information even more so about like beings of light coming to assist humanity as well, and how some of us that are here on earth actually are part of that team that came to assist on the earthly realm and working with these beings, which is why I've been able to communicate with the Octarians, and some people are connected with Pleiadians or Lemurians, whatever it might be. There's some humans here that are connected to the angelic realm, such as yourself. Like there are all kinds of people that are on earth right now to assist the human race with this expansion. Um, because it's like we are the little code, we're bringing the codes because we're able to receive the code to then pass the code on. So by being around a healer, being around somebody that channels, being around somebody that holds that frequency, it then unlocks something in you. And it's not necessarily that anything has to be done, it just means that our energy merges and then it awakens something new. And this is happening every day. I have a few clients that they're like, well, what do I do? How do I help humanity? And I'm like, you just be. Every time you get the urge to go do something, go do it. If you've been told to go on a trip, go on a trip, because your frequency goes into that area and it expands that area. And you may not have any idea you're doing that, but there are people that are literal portals of light that are just walking around the earth helping raise the frequency. Then there are people such as myself that are teachers and healers that come to help people understand this is why you're experiencing this, because we're just like, what happened to me? And then there's people that are like just able to channel information and help us understand from that a higher perspective. So there's so much going on earth right now, and it is going to be speeding up. And I have received information, and I think a lot of channelers are getting this same information right now. But I about probably 4 months ago, I started hearing by 2027, the earth is going to look very different. Like things are going to start to shift into a different energy. And they started showing me waves of humans. The awakening is continuing to happen, but there are going to be waves of humans that really start to shift into a higher frequency around 2027. And we have beings that are helping us more so on the other side to ascend into that. And so from now until around then, we might be going through kind of like the tower moment of humanity, of breaking down the old system so new can be risen back up. And tower moments don't feel good. If anybody's had a tower moment, I know I have. It is like the most one of the most devastating things, and you're like, what is happening? Like everything keeps going wrong. Well, it's not that it's going wrong, it's that it is giving you an opportunity to rebuild. Because if you were rebuilding on the same foundation that was created that's faulty, that same new thing, even if it was better and you build it on top of that, it would still crumble because everything has to be rebirthed. And so that has to die. Everything is in this death process. And so unfortunately, from the human perspective, we will see a little bit more hardship happening. We will see the earth shifting a little bit more. We might see a little, I mean, we're already seeing a lot of like natural disasters, but there's some more to come. And it's not because God's wrath is coming on the earth and trying to destroy humanity. It really is a rebirth of everything, and this rebirth is so it could be better. And like I was saying prior, like if we're focusing our energy on that and we know this is for the highest good, and we get out of the mindset that there is an actual end to, like when you transition from being a human to a spirit, you're still alive. Our real life is in spirit. This is all just a part of God's experiment of learning and expanding itself. And so when we remember that, yes, it's hard while we're here, but it's going to get so amazing if you can hang in there and keep focusing where we're going. And the
Yeah.
more people that focus where they're going, I saw Spirit always talks to me about how, everything's a replica of itself. And I always think about consciousness, and we all have our own individual thoughts, but we all have a collective energy. And I saw a flock of birds in the sky the other day, and it was just, I had never seen such a round like flock of birds. It was like a perfect, and they were just like flying around. And I was like, wow, that is perfect. And it was like, I just sat and looked at it. I'm like, that is what it's like in the energy of our thoughts. And that's how the collective moves. And so when you're focusing this way, more people, the flock follows, you know? So make sure your energy is going the way you want your flock to go and not where you don't want it to go. And that's how we'll make it through what is happening on earth right now much quicker, because we really are the creators and manifestors of our reality. And where we focus is what we will experience.
Yeah. Beautiful. I love that so much. And it's uh, we're gonna have to have another conversation later because I can just feel myself wanting to go in a whole nother tangent because even astrology, human design, gene keys, all of these energetic systems that educate us on what the energies of the universe are doing and how that's helping us. And that's the way that I like to look at it. I think there's some people in the field that are a little more maybe fearful around some of the changes that are happening, and they're like, oh, this hasn't happened in 300 years, what's going to happen next, and kind of go into that mode. And I'm always of the opinion or of the thought, this is going to be fun. What new energy is this bringing to bring us to healing? Because I feel like everything is bringing us to healing. Just like as an individual, when things come to the surface, they come to the surface to be healed. So what we're watching in society is, I don't think we've ever, I don't know of a time when we've been more aware of the ills of society.
Mm,
They're coming to the surface.
mm,
And if we look at it like it's coming to the surface to be healed,
mhm,
and if we look at it that way, then we can see, oh, we are in a healing stage. It's like a wound that's, you
mm,
know, oozing out the pus. Like it's getting rid of the pus so that new skin can be born. So what's happening in human design right now is we're moving from the incarnation cross of planning, which is all about communal structure and organization, to 2027, the incarnation cross of the sleeping phoenix.
oh, wow, I didn't know that.
And and we know the myth of the phoenix is it's all
Mhm,
about the fall and the rise, right? The
mhm,
fall and the rise. It's the rebirth. And that's exactly what we can see it not only in what's happening around us, but we can see it in the stars. We can see it in astrology. We can see it
mhm,
with the movement of the planets that are happening right now, where there's just huge movement that hasn't been seen in thousands of years, hundreds of
mhm,
years.
mhm,
So, it's pretty exciting. It can be a little scary because we don't know what to expect, but if we can just hold that energy of it's all happening for us,
mhm,
and that we do have that connection. But I'm excited about this idea of the cross of the sleeping phoenix, because we're moving from this kind of communal structuring into this individualized connection and rebirth, and some beautiful things can come of that, I think. So
yeah.
it's exciting. Okay, so remind us the name of the book, Parable of a New Earth.
Parables for a New Earth, I actually have it right here.
There
So it's
you go.
purple, Parables for a New Earth, Guidance for Humanity's Shift in Consciousness. It's on Amazon. And I have a workbook that you can get with it if you want to study it in depth. Each parable has a thing that you can do alongside it, but that can be found on Amazon.
Okay, so the workbook's on Amazon as
Yep.
well.
hmm
All right. And how do people find you, Angie? Where's the best place for them to find you?
You can find me through my website, angieharris.org, or you can find me under Soul Alignment Mentor on TikTok or YouTube or Facebook or anywhere. But Soul Alignment Mentor, Angie Harris, and I have all kinds of ways that you can contact me, email me, or through any social media.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I know you're very active on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube, right?
Yes.
Awesome. Beautiful. Thank you for being here. Is there any last things that you'd like to share before we say goodbye?
The words that I always want to share with people is the words that my dad told me after he passed and he was in heaven telling me what it's like there. And he always reminds me of this: the only thing that matters is love. And when we always remember that and we come back to love every single day, we'll never get it wrong. We can't get it
Beautiful.
wrong. So,
Beautiful.
yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for being here.
You're welcome.